If the scale hasn't moved in weeks or even months, this is for you. I'm going to walk you through 3 proven ways to break a weight loss stall. All 3 of them work, but the third option is the most effective and it's going to give you the fastest results, so be sure to stick around for that one. My name is Marcus. I've lost 60 pounds and I've been helping busy folks lose fat and get healthy for over 13 years now. Let's get into it. The first option is to keep your current food intake the same and increase your movement. So the input is staying the same. Let's say it's 2,500 calories per day, but we're increasing our output. So maybe we're taking our step count from 5,000 per day to 8,000. This is going to result in fat loss because we're taking an additional 3,000 steps per day or 21,000 additional steps over the course of the week. Now, it's crucial with this option that you keep your calorie intake essentially identical, because if you do not, if you eat more, this won't work. Reason being is the added movement is burning more energy. However, if you just take in more energy alongside that, it's just going to be a wash in terms of fat loss results. You can think about it like getting a raise at work. The only way to save the money from that raise is if you keep your spending habits the same. Because if you increase your spending at the same time, you're not saving any money. If you go with this strategy, I would not recommend just quote unquote working out more. Because what most folks tend to do subconsciously when they work out more is that they move less outside the gym. For example, lots of folks will start working out, say 3 times per week, and then psychologically they think to themselves, well, I probably don't need to go for that afternoon or evening stroll because I already got my exercise session in. So they burn a few more calories via working out, but then they often reduce their movement outside the gym. And as a result, nothing changes in the big scheme of things in terms of total calories expended via activity. This is why I'd recommend using your step counts as a gauge of your movement instead of your workouts, because they are much more reliable in terms of tracking. Option number 2 is to keep your output the same and decrease your input. Or in other words, continue doing 5,000 steps per day and decrease your calorie intake. This is a much more effective fat loss method than option number 1. Reason being is it takes additional time to burn calories via movement. However, it takes literally no time to reduce your energy intake. And you can think about it like this. Is it easier to save money by working more hours or to simply adjust your spending habits? It's way easier to adjust your spending, right? A more specific example, a single tablespoon of peanut butter takes all of 3 seconds to eat. That's 100 calories. It takes the average person about 30 minutes of leisurely walking to burn 100 calories. So we've got 3 seconds versus 30 minutes. Point being, it is so much more effective to modify your nutritional intake than it is to increase your activity level, and this is primarily due to time. Most folks don't have the time, nor do they want to work out and or walk for hours and hours every day. And so by simply changing your food choices and portions, you can still reach your fat loss goals without any added time investment via exercise. It is so much more practical and results driven. The third option is to reduce your calorie intake and increase your movement. And we're not talking about starving yourself or crash dieting and exercising like an insane person. We're talking about eating plenty of single ingredient whole foods with an emphasis on animal protein and living an active lifestyle, i.e. walking on a daily basis. That's it. Option number 3 is going to yield the fastest results because we're implementing strategy number 1 and 2 simultaneously. We're hitting it from both angles. It's like adjusting your spending habits and working more hours. You're going to save the most money the fastest this way. A few things to look out for. Folks message me all the time saying how they're eating 800 or 1,000 calories per day and not losing fat. Unless they weigh about 50 pounds, something is off, meaning in some way, shape, or form, their tracking method is inaccurate. Because if you take your weight in pounds and multiply it by, say, 10 to 12, and you are not losing fat while adhering to that calorie intake over the next 10 days, it's not your metabolism, it's not hormones, it's not cortisol, it's inaccurate tracking, which is actually great news because this is a very straightforward problem to solve, and here's how to do it. Get a digital food scale and track every single thing that you eat and drink over the next 10 days. And be sure to double and triple check that your calorie counts are dialed. For example, if you're tracking on MyFitnessPal, let's say, don't just scroll through and choose the lowest calorie option of the food that you're consuming. Because people do that and they're just shooting themselves in the foot because the body never lies. Meaning just because you opt for the lowest calorie option in an app doesn't mean that you actually consume that number of calories. Input the accurate one, and if anything, choose the higher calorie options because remember, fat loss is your goal. If you want results, it's better to overestimate than underestimate. Now, if you don't don't want to weigh and measure your food, unfortunately, you're just guessing because it's like going by feel according to your budget. You may have a rough idea of how much you spent last week or last month, but in order to find out, you look at your online bank statement and it's 100% accurate every time. The same concept applies to food tracking. How many calories you felt like you ate is often very different than how many calories you actually ate. Also, the reason why I mentioned to track for 10 days is because we want a weekend in there. Weekend eating habits are often very different than weekday eating habits, and so in order to get an accurate picture of our intake, we want at least one fully tracked weekend in the mix. So feel free to pick from any of those three options and you will begin losing fat. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And if you don't, you can take comfort in the fact that you didn't implement one of those three options properly, and so double and triple down on, you guessed it, tracking.